Okay, shalom everyone. I'm happy to have this shiur. I have to say thank you to Nancy for initiating. Nancy is the one who asked that we do something in Kino David in English in preparation for Shmitah. And I think for you it's the first time, your first Shmitah in Israel, I understand. And at least one other person I see here that it's their first Shmitah in Israel, maybe others. And even if it's not your first,
7 years is the last one.
calls come only every 7 years, so it's not always easy to remember. And even if you've had one or two before, I don't remember. I made the cheshbon. My first one was probably when I was about 10. I don't remember exactly, but I guess since yeshiva, since I was about, after 20, I basically remember the Shmitot. I have to say so. So I've had, if it's that, I've had about 5 or 6 Shmitot that I can remember. And I have to say something, I always quote my father. He says that, he remembers a few more Shmitot, about 4 Shmitot more than me. And he remembers the development of how it's growing, and there's more dealing with Shmitah and more learning and understanding of Shmitah as it grows, a gradual growth as Geulah, Kim'ah, one step at a time. And it's fascinating, Shmitah. I would like to start off with just a short mention of the beauty of mitzvah Shmitah in the sense of having faith in Hashem, to let go of everything for a year, in the sense of unity, of equality between different people, rich and poor, in the sense of dedicating and taking a sabbatical, which teachers do. I don't know if other people in other fields of their parnassah, if they have an opportunity. But to think of it on a national level, not each person takes a sabbatical at a different time, but the nation takes a sabbatical. And if we take Shabbat one day in the week, and it has an influence on our national identity. So certainly a year would have a tremendous influence on our national identity. And that has to do with spiritual growth and balance between spirituality and parnassah. Parnassah, livelihood, work, making a contribution to the world, to society, to Am Yisrael are all very important values. Not being dependent on others, being independent, working and making your effort in the world and making something of yourself. Every one of these is a very important value. And at the same time, it has to be balanced with the spiritual content, with emunah, with Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, and so on. And Shmitah does that in a very big way. And as much as we discuss the beauty of Shmitah, it also becomes less realistic or more difficult to be realistic. And it's so much so that, first of all, in the Torah itself, in the Torah Shebichtav, you find the Torah being aware of that and expressing that. People say, okay, but how are we going to be able to do this? We won't have food for at least 2 years, for the year of Shmitah, for the year after. And Hashem says, I will make a miracle. There will be food for a few years. But it's very not simple. And another expression of that is the fact that in the Gemara, it is compared, the people who keep Shmitah are compared to malachim, to angels, meaning it's superhuman. it's higher than human. And we find in Chazal all kinds of situations where they had to give a certain heter, so that because people could not in different situations keep Shmitah. And we find in the Torah that they didn't keep Shmitah, and that's why there was a punishment of Galut and so on. So it's a very difficult mitzvah to fulfill on the one hand. On the other hand, it's part of the growth of Am Yisrael and coming back to Eretz Yisrael. And it creates a very unique situation and argument and disagreement and discussion when Zionism returns to Eretz Yisrael, also before, but certainly at the end of the 19th century. This is before Rav Kook. Rav Kook was a young man, but before he was the chief rabbi, the question was already there, at least in no later than the 80s, the 1880s, the 80s of the 19th century. They had to start dealing with it. And there were two opinions. There was one opinion, what's the point of strengthening Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael if we don't keep Shmitah? And the other opinion is, And Dafka by keeping Shemitah, that's what will strengthen us in Eretz Yisrael. And the other opinion was we have to find a reasonable, pragmatic way for Jews to be able to come to Eretz Yisrael and work here and be farmers here and grow fruits here and be able to make a living. And we came to Rav Kook. Actually, Rav Kook didn't invent it, but strengthened the Terah Mechira, but we'll get to that later. In any case, I'm not going to discuss the future. We did have a shiur about that on Shavuot in Hebrew, about the question of where do we take Shemitah, where do we foresee Shemitah in 7 years, in 14 years, in 28 years, in 56 years. What is the realistic picture of keeping Shemitah? I will not get into that question this evening. It's a great question. I love it. But tonight we're going to try to be very pragmatic, very practical, not for farmers, for private people who are going to buy fruits and vegetables and may live in a building that has a garden or might live in a private home that has a garden. And what do you do during the year of Shemitah? So as we defined on the email that I sent about this topic, we're going to discuss private gardens, home plants, buying plants and flowers on Shemitah, buying, cooking, and handling vegetables and fruits during Shemitah, because no one is planning on not eating fruits or vegetables for the year, and the issue of Etel Mechira and any other questions that may come up during the shiur. And the reason I'm going to start with private gardens is because if you have a garden, you should be thinking of this issue now. It's mamash coming up. The basic halacha of Shemitah in the garden is your garden does not have to dry out and die during Shemitah. You're allowed to water your garden. It needs to be trimmed, all kinds of things like that. Basically, to keep the garden in its given situation, to enable it to live, and it doesn't have to be, dried out. It can be nice and green during Shemitah. You're allowed to water the plants and keep them and do whatever is necessary so that they don't die. Not only they don't die, they stay in the state that they're in when Shemitah started. That's called in the halacha le'ukmi, which means to keep the way it is. But what we're not allowed to do is to strengthen, le'avruye, to strengthen, to make it better. You cannot make your garden better during Shemitah. You can't plant new things, and you can't trim things in a way that's going to make them grow better, and mow the lawn in a way that will make it stronger and more thick and things like that. Because of this, you should be thinking, if you have a garden, again, private or in a joint building, a joint apartment building, you have to be thinking of your garden now. You should talk to your gardener. We have a garden. We've spoken to the gardener already. There are things that you can do before Shemitah, and there are things that if you want to do, you have to do them before Shemitah, not only before Rosh Hashanah. Shemitah starts on Rosh Hashanah, but you have to do them earlier. If you were planning on planting a fruit tree, you have 2 weeks from now, basically. Until then, you can still bring a new fruit tree to your garden. By Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is Shabbat in 2 weeks. After Tu B'Av, if you bring a new fruit tree, it can become problematic. There may be a way around it if you bring it with the soil. Usually fruit trees in a, what do you call it? A mishtala, a place that grows plants for people to buy and take home.
Nursery.
Sorry?
A nursery.
Nursery. I thought that's where they put the little kids. Okay, a plant nursery. Thank you. So usually in the nursery, they will have it in a big pot with soil. And when someone buys it, they take it to his garden to put the soil in his ground. So it may be okay, even closer to Rosh Hashanah, but it's best by Tu B'Av. And the reason for this is because the roots have to connect to the ground before Rosh Hashanah. If you want to make new grass, you need to do it pretty soon, maybe before Rosh Chodesh Elul. If you're really planting grass, it needs about 30 days to become sturdy, to become rooted where you're planting it, and you need to mow it once or twice so that it grows, and then you have 30 days before Rosh Hashanah that you need to do that. If you want to plant new grass You have to do that by Rosh Chodesh Elul, a month from yesterday, so that it's ready by Rosh Hashanah. Of course, today people don't usually plant new grass. They bring grass that's been grown already, sheets of grass, squares of grass, and put them in place, but that also has to be done a few days before Rosh Hashanah. Other plants that are not fruit plants or trees, if you want to plant something new in your garden, you can do that. There's a machloket, either until a few days before Rosh Hashanah, or maybe even up to Erev Rosh Hashanah. And since Rosh Hashanah is on a Tuesday, it's probably not what you want to be busy with on that Sunday and Monday right before Rosh Hashanah. So during the week before the Shabbat, before Rosh Hashanah, and once Rosh Hashanah comes, you cannot do anything new in your garden. So if there's anything you want to do, do it now. Also, plan with the gardener to come before Rosh Hashanah. You know, I don't know, gardeners come every other week, once a month. If they came now in Chodesh, if they come now in Chodesh Av, have them come again in Chodesh Elul before Rosh Hashanah, so that they don't have to come right after Rosh Hashanah. Maybe if he comes every 2 weeks, then he can come once a month, or every 3 weeks. You don't need him so much on Shemitah. Maybe a little less. You don't have to let the garden die, but you have to plan with him to do the minimal keeping of the garden during Shemitah. Another aspect of it, for instance, is that a gardener will usually put some fertilizer in your garden. And today there is fertilizer. Usually, in the past, the fertilizer was you put it in, you had to put it again after a few weeks, and again and again and again. Today there is fertilizer that is planned. It's what's it called? It's technologically, what is it called? Handasa genetic, genetically, whatever. Engineered. Thank you.
Slow release.
So that slow release, exactly. So it can release the fertilizer the whole year, or at least for half a year. So he doesn't have to do it every month, and you should do that before Rosh Hashanah, and you're set for the year. During the year of Shemitah, you don't have to worry about the amounts of water. What you shouldn't do is what you would do for something new. If you planted something new, and you were told during the first month, water it a lot, that you shouldn't do, because then you're making something grow, not just keeping it. But assuming you have things in place before Rosh Hashanah, come Rosh Hashanah, you can water the garden. It's usually today computerized, and it gives it as much water as is needed, and you don't have to worry about it. You gave it a few ounces more, a few ounces less. You don't have any intention to give it a tremendous amount of water that's going to make it grow in any unusual way. When the things become wild, they're climbing up into your windows, they're getting in the way. You can't enter the door of the house because the hedges are getting in the way. They're bothering your neighbors, etc., etc. It's ugly. It's wild and it's not pretty. Then you're allowed, the gardener can come, or you can, or even the gardener can come and cut it in a way that's not meant. A gardener would know how to trim something in a way that's going to make it grow better. That he should not do during Shemitah. But if he's just cutting it because it's getting in the way, or it's not pretty, it's not aesthetic, that is fine to do during the year of Shemitah. But you cannot do anything new in your garden outdoors during Shemitah. So I think that covers the basics of the outdoor garden. I'm going to move to home plants and things like that. But if there are any questions about the outdoor garden, now is the time.
I know you can't trim a tree to make it grow and produce, but can you trim a tree if you want to just keep it low? I don't like that you don't want it to produce.
You don't have to not make it produce, but what's the purpose of trimming it? If it gets in the way, it grows up too high, it makes a lot of dirt, it gets to the windows, whatever the reason is. There's a famous saying in the Gemara that, with the vines, the branches of the vines have to be cut very professionally to make the grapes grow for the next year. And that you're not allowed to do on Shemitah. But if you need wood for a fire, you're allowed to cut the grapevines or the branches. So someone sees you cutting the branches of the vines of the grapes on Shemitah. So, when the Gemara says your heart knows, do you mean because you need the wood for fire or for something else, or do you mean to make it grow? So if the reason you're doing it is because you don't want something to happen, it's okay. A different question would be if it grew a fruit tree and it has Shemitah fruits, you might not be able to cut off the branches and kill the Shemitah fruits. That's a later question. We'll get to that one later. That's because of the fruits, not because of cutting the tree. Okay?
Yeah, but if there's no fruit on the branches yet, you can cut it. I just like to keep it low so it doesn't produce so much.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would have it done now before Rosh Hashanah. And then how much does it have to be done every year? Like we have a big hedge that grows. If you don't cut it once a month, it really gets wild. But a tree, I assume you don't have to cut it every 3 months. You do it once, maybe again towards the end of the year, in the middle of the year. That's probably enough. So then I would make sure to do it once. Okay, whatever you need to do, but I would do it once before Rosh Hashanah and do it as little as possible, but yeah, you can do it. You don't have to not do it during Shemitah. Okay, by the way, another question of the, I guess we'll get to I'll get back to that with the fruits later on. If you have a fruit tree in your garden and the fruits have Kedushat Shmitah, Kedushat Shvit, we'll get to that a bit later. That will go back to the garden. As far as home plants, it's pretty simple. There are two psukim about Shmitah. One of them uses the term sadeh, a field, and the other one uses the term adama, soil, which raises a question: are the halachot of Shmitah only in a field, or even where you have soil indoors? When you have soil indoors, meaning if you have a hothouse, where you cover the plants with something. So again, we're not farmers. That's not what we're dealing with usually. But if you have house plants, you have plants inside your home in pots and things like that. So there is a difference of opinion about certain details, but basically, if it's not on soil, it's on a floor. Today's modern homes, we all have tiles, and the tiles are such that even if you put soil on the ground and grew the plant, the roots would not break through your floor into the ground. So even if it's on a plant with a hole, without a hole, it's not so important. If it's in the house, it has a floor of cement or tiles underneath it and a roof above it, then for those plants, you can do whatever you want in Shemitah. It's like it's not in Eretz Yisrael, it's inside a home. So you can grow fruits and vegetables. By the way, that is one of the solutions, both for farmers and for all of us to be able to buy fruits and vegetables, is to do things in hot houses, but hot houses that also they put a kind of special plastic on the ground so that the roots can't get through that plastic. Then they put soil on that, and it has a roof. It's a closed building, and they grow the fruits and vegetables in there, and that's okay. So in your private home, you want to have a plant in your house, you can have it, you can get a new one, you can water it, things like that. You can even grow something or plant something new in it if you'd like to. But if it's outdoors, whether it's on the roof, so it doesn't have a roof above it, or it's on the porch and it doesn't have a roof above it. If it has the floor of the roof on the next floor on top of it, that's okay. But if it's hanging over the railing of the house or of the porch, and it leans over beyond where there is a floor or a roof, so it's over the ground or under the sky, anything like that, or even if it has a kind of a pot holder hanging outside the railing of the house or of the porch. So here it becomes, no, in any case, if it's hanging outside, so it has all the halachot of Shmitah. There could be different situations, whether it's the Oraita or the Rabbanan, rabbinic or Torah law, but basically you have to keep the halachot of Shmitah. So as long as you're in the house with the floor underneath and the roof on top, you don't have to consider the halachot of Shmitah for those plants. Once it's either on ground, even if it's under a floor, or even if it's on the roof or on a porch but under the sky, then it has all of the halachot of Shmitah. You can go to a nursery and buy a plant on Shmitah and bring it home. I used to learn, I was taught in the past, that if you do so, you have to make sure that it doesn't come in contact with the ground, meaning you have to put it in a plastic bag and cover it until you're in your house, so it doesn't come in contact with the ground. But I learned this year that there are different, it's true that there are poskim who say that, but I learned this year that there are poskim who say that it's okay, you don't mean to plant it, it's just for a fleeting moment. Even if you're cleaning your living room and you take your house plants out to the garden and put them out there for half an hour, and wash the floor in the living room and bring them back in, that's okay, because you have no intention of planting them. Nothing is going to happen in that short time, so it's okay. You don't have to worry about that. Shmita basman hazeh in our times is not from Torah law because we don't have all of Am Yisrael here. It's rabbinic law, and in a case of this kind of machloket, we can be lenient. Someone who wants to be machmir, there are poskim who say you should be machmir, but basically I'm following Rav Melamed who says that it's okay to be lenient in that case. Also, you don't have to worry about, I will speak about buying flowers later on, but you have a vase with flowers, you can take that outside. It's not going to root into the ground, it's just flowers. So that's, it's flowers in a vase with water. Nobody's planting that in the ground, so that's not a problem. Even if someone brought you flowers for Shabbat and you want to put them dafka outdoors, that's okay. It's in a flower vase. It's not anything that's going to be rooted into the ground. The one restriction we have for house plants is if they are connected. In other words, if it's a house plant that is in something that's connected to the home, it's built into the wall, or if it's a very big, heavy flower plant, you have a real big, giant flower plant that has a tree in it inside your house, and you cannot pick up this flower plant. You need a few people or an expert or a special machine to pick it up if you need to. Then most opinions would say that you have to keep the laws of Shmitah for that plant. And it's interesting, I was asked twice in the past week, people are now growing things on walls. Make a wall where things grow. If it's in the wall is part of the house. You have to keep the laws of Shmitah in the wall. So house plants that are small, that can be moved around on a floor, under a roof, no Hilchot Shmitah. If it's connected to the building or under the sky or not on a floor of cement or tiles, then you have to keep the laws of Shmitah. Again, any further questions about that detail? Okay. So we discussed buying plants and flowers. By the way, a person who has a nursery should not, of course, he should not plant new plants on Shmitah unless he also has a hothouse, unless he has a place where he has everything disconnected from the soil of the land itself. And he puts that plastic floor and it has a roof, then he can grow new plants on Shmitah. Otherwise, he shouldn't be planting and helping new plants grow during Shmitah. So he shouldn't be doing that. But even if he did, it's not halachically forbidden to buy them from him. But I would say, if you are looking to buy some plants on Shmitah, I would ask and look around, and I'm sure you can find, and you don't have to go to Eilat or to Metura to find, I'm sure you can find somewhere around the central area of Israel, maybe even in the Sharon area, someone who worked during Shmitah, a nursery that worked during Shmitah according to the laws of Shmitah. And then I would recommend, first of all, buy from him, he kept the halacha. Second of all, buy from him, you're helping him, you're giving him chizuk. So if you want to buy something during Shmitah, I would, in the beginning of Shmitah, it's not a real issue because he planted it months ago or a year ago, and he just kept it now and you can go and buy it from him. Later on during Shmitah, if you want to buy something which is young and new and you're afraid that maybe he planted it during Shemitah, halachically it's not forbidden to buy it from him. But I would recommend look for a place that kept the laws of Shemitah and buy from him and strengthen him. I will mention once again, next time you're in the airport, the duty-free doesn't keep halacha. The duty-free doesn't keep Shabbat, nor does it keep Pesach, by the way. They don't sell chametz. There is a small duty-free, the size of a small store in what is it called? In Hebrew, it's called a sharvul. Is it called the sleeve? What do they call the ABCD at the airport? In Hebrew, it's called a sharvul. In sharvul D, all the way at the end of sharvul D, there's a small duty-free that keeps Shabbat and sells chametz. So I'm not at the airport often, but when I've been to the airport, I make a point of going there, saying Shalom Aleichem, buying something just to say shkoyach that you have this place here. So I'm saying the same thing about Shemitah. Okay. Fruits and vegetables. One of the questions that someone asked me was, when does Shemitah start? So Shemitah starts on Rosh Hashanah and ends on Rosh Hashanah, the day before Rosh Hashanah. Shemitah is from Aleph Tishrei until Kaftet Elul. But the fruits and vegetables don't go by the date that we are in, but by different dates regarding certain details about the fruits and vegetables. The first thing is we have to define what is a fruit and what is a vegetable. There are some different opinions on this about certain boundaries, but basically things that grow roots, they grow new roots and what's it called? The geza, the trunk. New roots in a trunk each time, that is a vegetable. A plant that has roots and a trunk, even if its branches renew themselves, that can be considered a tree. If it grows from the roots every year, then that would be considered a vegetable. So bananas are vegetables, not fruits. That's why the bracha we say on bananas is borei prei adama and not borei prei ha'etz. Generally speaking, vegetables are considered Shemitah by the time they are picked, not by the time they are, green wall, not built into the wall, but rather attached to the wall and can be removed. Yeah, okay, but if it's attached to the wall, so it's attached. It's like a big flower pile. Same halacha as a big flower.
Okay.
So going back to the fruits, the vegetables, we'll start with the vegetables. I'll start with the fruits to put them aside for the beginning of Shemitah. The fruits are not going to be Shemitah for a while. Fruits that we will have during Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev are fruits that grew this year. We will have fruits in the first months of the next Hebrew year. They will be fruits that grew this year, the one that we're in now. And those are not fruits of Shemitah, even if they are picked on Shemitah, during Shemitah. Vegetables, the moment they're picked during Shemitah, they are considered, it's called Kedushat Shvi'it. They have the Kedusha, the holiness, the unique holiness of Shnat Shemitah. So the first week of Tishrei, no big deal. Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the potatoes and the carrots and the tomatoes and so on and the cucumbers are going to be picked during Elul, put in freezing or whatever it is, and then brought to the market a week later. The first week or two or three of Tishrei, the vegetables will still be vegetables from the 6th year, from this year, Tafshin Pei Aleph. But very quickly, within a week or two or three, we will have vegetables that are being picked during Shemitah. Now, before we get into the details, a general comment. You will see a lot of hechsherim that give the kashrut, that say on them, lelo chashash tevel, orla ushvi'it. Tevel means that they did not take out the trumot u'masrot. So it's forbidden to be eaten because you have the demand, the halachic demand, the mitzvah of putting aside trumot u'masrot. If you have fruits or vegetables that are tevel, the trumah and masrot were not separated, it's forbidden to be eaten. So you want to know when you buy something that it does not have any tevel in it. Orla is a fruit during the first 3 years of the tree. We just learned about that in our shiur before Mincha this Shabbat. Those fruits are forbidden to be eaten. So you want to know that there's no Orla. Shvi'it is not forbidden to be eaten. Fruits of Shnat Shmitah, not only are they not forbidden to be eaten, they are holy. They have a special holiness. I'm not saying that if you eat them, you automatically become a holy person, but it's a mitzvah. Maybe it's a mitzvah. There's a kind of a mitzvah to eat them. It's part of the mitzvah of being a Jew in Eretz Yisrael and having the holiness of Shemitah. But the issue is that if the fruits don't have Kedushat Shvi'it, then I can just treat them the way I do every other year. So I want to know that there's no Kedushat Shvi'it, not in the sense of it's something that's forbidden. I don't want to make mistakes, or I don't want to have a headache. Just tell me that it's fruits and vegetables without any holiness. I can treat them regularly. I can do what I want. I don't need this headache of holiness, and then I have to do A, B, or C, and I'm not allowed to do, X, Y, and Z. So I don't like that. It shouldn't say that. The Hechsher should say, it doesn't have Tevel, it doesn't have Olah. I'm sorry to say it doesn't have Kedushat Shvi'it. Rather than say, I don't want to have a headache, I want to say, I do want to know about this. But you have to know what to do with fruits and vegetables that have Kedushat Shvi'it. And here we also have to discuss what is called the Heter Mechira. And also Otzar Beit Din. So what do? We want to eat fruits and vegetables during the year, and we're not allowed to plant anything new. So vegetables is more difficult, because vegetables, you can plant them until a few days before Rosh Hashanah. They start to root into the ground after a few days. Maybe some of them, you plant some of them right before Rosh Hashanah, and it takes them a month or two to grow. So during Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, we'll have vegetables. But come Tevet, Shvat, Adar, the second half of the year, or after the first quarter of the year, it's going to be difficult to have vegetables. Even if something grew on its own, in other words, you had a field of a certain vegetable, and here and there, when you were picking the vegetables, a few vegetables fell to the ground and grew new vegetables. They're still forbidden on Shemitah. That's called sfichim. Because what happened is, in the time of the Gemara, that there were farmers who would plant vegetables on Shemitah, and they would say, oh, I don't know where it came from. It must have fallen from the previous crop that I picked. So the rabbis forbade to have, anything that grew, any vegetables, not fruits, vegetables that grew on Shemitah were forbidden to be eaten. Fruits is different. Fruits, because they grow, you don't plant the tree from scratch. On Shemitah, the fruits are there on a tree. Ilana, I'll make mistakes. You'll try and contain it. No, I'm trying. I'll try from your side. You try from my side. You try from your side. So the fruits, if you don't plant a new tree every year, so the fruits grow on the tree, and they're permitted, even if they have Kedushat Shvi'it, they're permitted to be eaten. What we're not allowed to do with fruits and vegetables that have Kedushat Shvi'it is, first of all, to own them. They're not mine. I am the farmer. I grew vegetables that are being picked. If they're picked before Rosh Hashanah, I can bring them to the market and sell them. But if they're picked after Rosh Hashanah, these are vegetables of Shnat Shmitah, I am not allowed to own them. I can't take them to myself, for myself, and then sell them to other people. I can't do that. Every person is allowed to come to the field. Every person is allowed to come to my field. Now, just like I'm not allowed to own it, someone else is also not allowed to own it. So no one can come with his truck and fill a whole truck or a whole car with vegetables, with my vegetables, and drive away. But what every person can do is can come every day and take what he needs for food for his family for that day, for 3 meals. You need some potatoes, some carrots, some cucumbers. You can come to the field and take what you need for that day, For your family, you have 6 members in your family. You need two potatoes for each person for that day. That's 36 potatoes for 3 meals. You can come and take 36 potatoes, but no one is allowed to own those fruits. So that's one problem. The other problem is that, okay, no one can take them and sell them, but also we all need food to eat. We don't all live with a field next door that we can go and pick 36 potatoes for our family for that day. So in the old times, there were fields all over the place. The country was an agricultural country. In modern days, we live in big cities. Most of us don't live near fields. Where am I going to go pick potatoes? So we need someone to bring potatoes. Right now I'm discussing vegetables. I'll get to fruits a little later. So I need someone to bring the vegetables to the city. So that's where they're developed a certain halachic notion called otzar beit din. Otzar means how do you say, a machsan, like a place where you gather the vegetables.
Storage?
Yeah, like a storage place. So like this is the beit din storage place. Now the beit din says, listen, says to the farmer, listen, you're not allowed to do what you do every year, to collect the vegetables, to take them to the market, to sell them and so on the one hand. On the other hand, everybody else needs to buy and eat vegetables, or maybe not to buy, to get them for free, but they can't come here to get them. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a deal. You are going to work for the Beit Din. I'm going to ask you, you happen to own some trucks also, right? And you have some workers who can pick the vegetables for us. You're going to work for the Beit Din this year. You're going to pick those vegetables, put them in boxes, put them in a truck, bring them to the market. People are going to pay for your work, not because they're your vegetables. They're going to pay Beit Din to pay you to be able to make sure that everybody gets vegetables. This is called Otzar Beit Din. And it means that these vegetables have Kedushat Shvi'it, but we're allowed to go to the store and buy them. It's not void of halachic difficulties. This whole idea of Otzar Beit Din has very many difficulties, and I'm not going to get into them, but it's used. Every Shmitah, there are people who use them. There are groups that get together. There are organizations that get together because by doing this, they're enabling a farmer to keep Shmitah and enabling people in the cities to buy fruits with Kedushat Shvi'it. You might not find a difference in the price because at the end of the day, it's kind of how do you say in halakha, it's called a ha'arama. But at the end of the day, it's the same farmer who would say, these are my vegetables, I'm selling them to you, who is this year, he's saying, I'm working for the Beit Din, getting paid for bringing them to the city, not because they're my vegetables. Okay, so it's a little bit of a roundabout, a way around the halakha, but it's used. It's very often used, and you might want to support. What you're going to find this coming year is 2 things. First of all, you're going to find lists. You're going to have lists all over the place, and I don't remember this 7 years ago, but I'm sure it's going to be also all over the internet, also in the newspapers. Also, the Moetzah Datit, also the shuls are going to be putting out lists of, of saying this week, potatoes are still not Shmitah, cucumbers are already Shmitah, and so on. You'll need these lists all the time. You'll need to know when you go to a certain shop, you go to the supermarket, you go to a fruit and vegetable store. You'll need to know where you're going. What is his deal? Don't go to a store without hashgacha. Don't do that every year. But don't go to a store without hashgacha. You don't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. You go to a store with hashgacha and he'll know. Either he'll tell you it's all heter mechira, or he'll tell you I'm buying from Arabs, or he'll tell you I'm bringing it from Europe. Not me, it's imported from Europe. Or he'll tell you it's Otzar Beit Din. If it's Otzar Beit Din, you go to the store, you buy what you need to buy, and you pay. When you bring it home, it has Kedushat Shvi'it. This is true about vegetables. It will be true later on in the year about fruits. The fruits don't go by the time they're picked. The fruits go by the time they began to, I don't know if this is the right word, to bud. The beginning of the flower that is going to grow to become a fruit, that is what decides for the fruits from what year they are. So anything that started to grow to become a flower and a fruit now, and is going to be ripe somewhere during Tafshin Pei Bet, is from the 6th year, not from the 7th year. On the other hand, anything that grows next year and is going to be ripe and you're going to be eating it in Tafshin Pei Gimel, some fruits, even Tafshin Pei Dalet, are going to have Kedushat Shvi'it. So you're going to have lists of vegetables and lists of fruits, and you're going to go to the store and you want to know, is this from Israel? Is it imported? Who bought it? And here's where we bring in the Heter Mechira. Otzar Beit Din is one solution. Another solution is you buy from outside of Israel. Maybe you're buying from Gaza. Not such a beautiful idea. There are some good people in Gaza, I'm sure. But there are some people in Gaza, when I pay them for their vegetables, they turn them into missiles. I don't want to buy vegetables from you guys. Or there are farmers in Israel. Now, what do I do? So there's this idea of the Heter Mechira, which started before Rav Kook. But in the time of Rav Kook, in the beginning of the 20th century, okay, make the cheshbon, 100 and this is 70 years is 10 Shmitot, another 5 is 35 years, about 16 Shmitot ago, more or less. No, I've overdone it. About 12 Shmitot ago, 12 or 13 Shmitot ago, Rav Kook was in Eretz Yisrael. He was not yet the chief rabbi. He was the rabbi of the new settlements in Yafo and the area of the central area of Israel. New settlements like Petach Tikva and Kfar Saba. Tel Aviv didn't exist yet, nor did Ra'anana. So he was in charge of the mitzvot hatriyot ba'aretz, and he wrote a whole book to allow the Heter Mechira, meaning we sell the land to non-Jews. We are not strengthening people who are fighting against us, because the whole idea is to enable Jews to partially keep their agricultural work during Shnat Shmitah. So this enables farmers to continue to grow things on Shmitah. There are certain restrictions, we can't get into the details, but they can grow fruits and vegetables during Shmitah, and they sell them and we can buy them. There is a difference of opinion whether or not these fruits have Kedushat Shvi'it. Depends exactly what they were. Some say yes, some say no. Usually most people who buy them don't keep the halachot of Kedushat Shvi'it. Most of the fruits and vegetables in Israel, with the hechsher of the Rabbanut, will be Heter Mechira. In most of the supermarkets, it's going to be Heter Mechira. In certain stores, they will have Otzar Beit Din, or, and here's a very confusing term, they're going to use the term Shmitah Lechumra. I am Machmir and Shmitah, meaning I am not going to count on Heter Mechira, but what does it mean? I'm killing the business of Jews, Jewish farmers in Eretz Yisrael, and bringing, even if I'm not buying from Gaza, I'm bringing it from Europe or wherever, and I'm not helping my Jewish brothers, my Jewish brothers who are farmers in Eretz Yisrael. So which one is the Chumrah? So it's a great example of a question, what is being more Machmir? So I will say in short that I certainly think it's not right for us. No one here today is a farmer. So it's as we say, Be'ivrit, ze lo chokhmah. You know, to say, I am machmir at your expense. You're the farmer and I'm not going to accept the Heter Mechira. But if I was the farmer, would I say that? So I don't think that's a right thing to say. And I think it's right to say, if Rav Kook allowed it, if the Rabbanut Harashit Israel, throughout all the years, all the decades, since Rav Kook has always allowed the Heter Mechira, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes more enthusiastically, sometimes less enthusiastically, but they allow it. I cannot say I don't buy this. If there's Otzar Beit Din, which is another Jews trying to keep Shemitah, and I can support that, okay, I can do some of this and some of this. But I don't want to support what some people call Shemitah Lechumra, meaning that I'm going to buy from non-Jews outside of Israel rather than buy from Jews in Israel. I would not be supportive of that, but you do have to know what you're buying and what are the halachot. What are the basic halachot if it has Kedushat Shvit? Okay, first of all, you can't just throw it away. Meaning you ate half a cucumber, you can't throw away the other half. You took salad to your plate and you didn't finish your salad. Your child, your grandchild didn't finish the salad. You can't just throw it in the garbage. You can make a special Shmitah garbage pail where you put those things and daily you put in a new bag so you don't put something fresh with something that's already rotting. You let it rot for a day or two, and then you throw it out in the garbage separately, not with the regular garbage. You make regular foods with it. If you like to make something very, let me call it peculiar, okay? You like to concoct some kind of dish that nobody else in Israel makes. And you are the only one in this country where you found a group, you created a support group of 10 people in Israel who like to cook this special thing from this vegetable or fruit. Don't do that on Shemitah. Just use it in the usual way that people, you're certainly allowed to eat it, but cook it in a normal way, eat it when it's, when it's finished and there's nothing, or it's, throwing it away. If it's just a pit, without fruit or vegetable, you can throw it away. If it has parts of the fruit or the vegetable, put it in that special Shemitah garbage pail in a special bag, give it a day or two, and then throw it away in its separate bag, but you can throw it in the regular garbage. That's the basic knowledge of the fruits that have Kedushat Shvit. You will also find wines, always, not only on Shemitah, but some people mostly not during Shemitah, but in the year after Shemitah, will be selling wines that have Kedushat Shvit because they made the wine during Shemitah, grapes from Shemitah. They didn't want to get around Shemitah, and they want to sell it as part of a Tzar Beitin. Buy it the year after, but you have to know that you have to drink that wine. Once you pour that wine into your cup, you make Kiddush on that wine. It's beautiful. It's absolutely fine. But once you've poured that wine into your cup, you have to drink it. You can't pour it out. You can't just throw it away. Or if you drank part of it and don't want to finish it, put it aside, let it sit there on the counter in the kitchen for a day or two. After 2 days, you're not going to want to eat it or drink it anymore anyhow, and then you can spill it out. If you keep the minhag and havdalah of making the cup overflow, you can't do that with a wine that has Kedushat Shvit, because you can't intentionally make it overflow and then it just gets thrown out. Those are the basic laws of the fruits and vegetables that have Kedushat Shvit. Again, in the beginning of the year, it begins in the first days, nothing yet. After a week or 2 or 3, it begins to be vegetables that have Kedushat Shvit. Somewhere later in the year, towards the middle of the year, fruits begin to be fruits that grew after Rosh Hashanah and have Kedushat Shvit, and it continues. At the beginning of Tafshin Pei Gimel, the vegetables some of them will still be from Kedushat Shvit, not many, because you can't plant vegetables on Shemitah unless you plant them in a hothouse, and then they don't have Kedushat Shvit. So not many vegetables, but fruits will continue into the year after Shemitah, and you have to have that in mind after Shemitah has ended. If you have a fruit tree in your garden, okay, not farmers, you have a private garden and you have a fruit tree with lemons, with pomegranates, whatever it is that you have in your garden, and it grows during Shemitah at the time that those fruits grew on during Shemitah and they have Kedushat Shvit, you don't own them. They are hefker, they belong to everyone equally. You're supposed to allow people come in and pick your fruits. They're not allowed to pick the whole tree, but they can take enough fruits for their family for the day. So you're going to have people trickling into your garden all the time taking some fruits. Basically, halachically, that's what you're supposed to do. But Chazal also said that you have to ask, if a farmer locks his gates and his fence, builds a fence around his field and locks the gate and doesn't allow people in to come and take his fruits or vegetables during Shemitah, then you're not allowed to take them. Even though basically the instruction of the Torah is that it's for everyone equally, if he didn't allow that halakha to fall into place, then you can't come and take from his field without his permission. So if you see a field on Shmitah with fruits or vegetables, you have to knock on the door or on the fence of the field, on the gate of the field. Ask, who is the farmer here? Are you keeping Shmitah? Because if you are, it belongs to everyone. I can take from your field. Maybe he's a Heilige Jew and he's going to say to you, of course, I'm so happy you came. It's Shmitah, isn't it beautiful? We're all here in Eretz Yisrael. Please take what you need for your family for the day. Maybe he's going to say to you, what, you weirdos? It's my fruit, it's my field, get out of here. So if he says that, maybe you want to reprimand him. Maybe you want to teach him about Shmitah. Maybe you want to love him and tell him maybe one day you'll see the light, whatever. But you can't take his fruits and vegetables. Going back to your home, your garden, you do not have to allow people into the garden because on the one hand, you have to allow them to take the fruits. But on the other hand, you don't want every Joe Schmo walking around in your garden. Who knows what else he's going to do? Is he going to peek into your house? Is he going to take your garden chair? You don't want everyone walking into your garden during Shemitah. But you do have to allow people to take the fruits. So there are two solutions. One is when you see the fruits are ripe, you can pick them, put them in a box, put the box outside the entrance to your house, put a nice sign saying, Am Yisrael, I love you all. These are fruits from Shemitah. Anyone who wants can take them. It has Kedushat Shvi'it. So please, if you take them, treat them with Kedushat Shvi'it according to the laws of Kedushat Shvi'it. Maybe put a little leaflet that gives people instructions what you have to do with Kedushat Shvi'it. That's one option. The other option is to put a sign at the entrance to your house that says, we have a tree, a lemon tree in our garden, whatever it is, and it has Kedushat Shvi'it. And if someone wants fruits from our tree, please knock on our door. We will be happy to allow you to take the fruits. And maybe someone will knock on your door and say, hey, beautiful, I want to take a few lemons. And you'll say, that's beautiful, please, go right ahead. So you don't have to leave the garden unlocked. And for anybody who wants to walk in, you have to initiate a way for those who really are interested to be able to come and pick some fruits from your garden. And basically,
Can I ask you a question about when we throw out food salad that we didn't finish? You didn't clean your plate. So after you put it aside and it waits for a couple of days, can you then mix it with your regular garbage, or should it stay separate in a separate bag?
It should stay separate. But in any case, you probably, you'll put it, you're not going to leave the salad, the plate with the salad sitting there on the counter waiting till it rots. You're going to want to wash the plates and not leave the garbage all over the kitchen. So you're going to want to collect what's left of the fruits and vegetables and the salads and everything else. You're going to want to collect it in some kind of bag, closed bag anyhow.
Right, those brown composting boxes that the city gave us a few years ago, if we still have those would be good.
Right, exactly. So you put whatever you need into that and you collect it for 2 or 3 days, and then you close that up. Maybe you even tie it up, put it aside for another day, and then throw it out in the regular garbage.
Okay, thanks.
Please, any other questions?
For instance, if you like to cook with wine, could you use Shvi'it wine to cook with? Is that considered a legitimate culinary purpose, or is that considered?
It's a matter of norms. In other words, if it's normative, and people people generally do that. If you have to look around on the internet to find those individuals in the world who like to do that, then it's not normative. If it's a known thing and people around you do it, then it's fine. Yeah.
And what about, you didn't mention stuff grown a lot outside the borders of Eretz Yisrael?
Okay. So there are some areas, again, in the fruit and vegetable store, they should know, thank you, Michael, they should know to tell you, this comes from there, and it's not Tzal Beit Din, and it's okay, and it doesn't have Kedushat Shvi'it, and it's not Hitel Mechira either. There could be things like that.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, I may have missed it, but fruit that's growing during Shemitah, okay? Like you said, if we have a tree that, next year is going to, do you have to do Trumot and Masrot from it?
Fruits that do not have Kedushat, that have Kedushat
Shvi'it.
fruits that have Kedushat Shvi'it don't have an obligation of Trumot U'Maasot because it does not belong to anyone
So it's
specific.
the whole thing. Okay.
Because
Next question.
every
next
year
question.
Hefker doesn't have Trumot U'Maasot, so the fruits that have Kedushat Shvi'it Trumot U'Maasot.
Okay. What about spices?
Go ahead, Sina.
What about spices?
Don't remember. Good question. Okay, homework begins. Probably Shemitah, but I have to check. I will check.
Okay, and this is something that someone
writing
told
down.
me. All right, I know that we all base ourselves on what a Rav Kook said. Okay, but I've been told that what we say that a Rav Kook said has been sort of taken out of context. And basically what he said is if there's no other way, then we can do Heter Mechira.
I would not say that Heter Mechira is the best solution that I want forever. Rav Kook himself said that it has to be reconsidered for every Shemitah from then on, meaning that it's not an automatic Heter forever. It's certainly undoubtedly a halachic construction that he had to put together for this heter, not something that you would say, lechatchila, this is the main path of halacha. But at the same time, he did say it's valid, it's necessary. So I would say, if in the big picture, I would be looking to minimize heter mechira and how other solutions grow and expand, if I could. But once again, I'm not the farmer, I'm not the Rav of a kibbutz.
So I just recently heard there are these advertisements on the radio where they're trying to help Israeli farmers and including us in the mitzvah of Shemitah by us, quote unquote, buying dalet amot of land from this farmer. So this way he sort of gets money so he doesn't have to work, all right? And we are keeping the lands and doing Shemitah, so we're also getting the mitzvah of the Shemitah. But it's sort of like a temporary purchase kind of thing. So
I would say, first of all, I know what you're talking about as far as the advertisements. I have not checked them or gone into detail into exactly what they are and who's running it and exactly what he means. But I would say the issue of supporting the farmer so that he doesn't have to work on Shemitah, on the one hand, I would agree with. In the short, you were there, I think, Sina, about what the grand plan is for Shemitah 7, 14, 21, 28, 35 years from now, and so on. I would certainly say that it's a national mission, and it has to be planned financially on a national level. You cannot expect 2% of the society or farmers to take the Shemitah burden of a nation. So it has to be done on a national level. I believe it can be done gradually on a national level, but it has to be that the nation cares and is interested and is keen on doing it. So maybe as a gradual growing in that direction is supporting the farmer so that he doesn't have to work during Shemitah. That might be a nice thing. Owning a dalet amot in Eretz Yisrael is nice, but it's kind of, I'm not against it, but it's on a certain level of owning, like you say, a certain level of owning land in Eretz Yisrael. It might be a bit of a kind of a nice way to say that I'm keeping Shemitah. I think it's more important supporting him. At the same time, we also have to have a financial plan. If one of us is the prime minister or in the government, we have to see to it that the millions of people have food during Shemitah. And I don't think that the right way to go about that would be to have bitachon, have midata bitachon and faith in Hashem. I think we have to make sure that we have solutions in place for Shemitah. So since that is not our first worry right now, because most people are going to continue working and use the Heter Mechira, So I think to do what you're suggesting is a nice thing. On the grander level, on the grander national level, I think we're going to need other solutions.
Is Otzer Bezdin also a B'diavad thing, or is that more L'chatchila than the Mechira, Heter Mechira?
That's a very controversial, the answer to that question is controversial.
Can you repeat
Because
the question, please?
on the one hand, the Otzar Beit Din idea stems from something that is lichatchila, but it's moved so far from where it was lichatchila, meaning it stems from an agricultural society where everybody lives close to the fields on the one hand, and on the other hand, somebody needs to do some harvesting and collecting and so on. So I'm going to restate the question for Carrie. Shalom asked, is Otzar Beit Din also problematic like Heter Mechira, or is it better? Is it lechatchila? So I'm saying the beginning of Otzar Beit Din is better than the beginning of Heter Mechira, because we do lechatchila, we live and there's agriculture and we need the fruits and vegetables, and it's natural that we'll go pick them, and it's natural that I'll say to you, it's your field, put them in a box, I'll bring it out to the city and let the chevra take from it. And you know what? We'll pay you for bringing it to the city. It can start in a more natural way. But the more it's become larger and a plan and a whole structure, it's moved farther away from the original idea. So yet at the same time, I would say it does have a more lechatchila. It is more of a lechatchila thing than Heter Mechira. And it also has the beauty of two things. First of all, what I said before, I don't want to compare Shmitah to Tevel and Orla. Tevel and Orla is an Isur. Shmitah is a mitzvah. So I want not to get involved with Tevel and Orla. I want, yes, to get involved with Kedushat Shvit. So I will be happy to look for Otzar Beit Din, and that will be part of what I will do on Shemitah. I will seek out Otzar Beit Din, and that will be part of what I buy. At the same time, it is my responsibility to see to it that the farmer has parnasah during Shemitah, because I can't put the burden of Shemitah on him. And those farmers who are working according to Heter Mechira, I feel it's my responsibility to buy from them as well. So I'm not only going to look for Otzar Beit Din and not Heter Mechira.
I just wanted to show off my bottle of Otzar Beit Din wine. It was given to me, and I was told, more than one bottle was given to me, that every last drop has to be consumed.
Or you let it, you leave it out for a few days if you didn't finish it, and then you can throw it away. Bring it to one of the Kiddushim next year.
I think I brought one bottle to somebody who's in this group, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you getting to the topic of biur and
No, I'm not going to get to biur now. That's
Anyway.
Let's
I
start
had
at
one more
the
question.
beginning of the year. It's a very specific halakha biur. Usually people don't even have, maybe wine. If you have wine of Kedushat Shvit, you have to know about biur. Otherwise,
one of the
basically,
first
you're not gonna
things.
have-
One of the first things I did actually, was a few years after we made Aliyah, is I remember I had a whole bunch of organic grape juice that you told me I had to be mafkir it during biur, and I remember going out and getting a Beit Din, together so I could do that.
a few people to do the hefker.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's leave it for now because people don't know what it's about. So for now, we'll save it for later in the year when we need it, when we need to deal with it.
Can
So
I ask
somebody-
one more question?
Let me just see for a second if there was a question.
I had a question.
On the chat, if there was a question. Oh, yeah. Besides selling, does Otzar Beit Din let them plant vegetables during the year? No. No, you cannot plant vegetables during the year. The only way of planting vegetables during the year is if you do it in one of the solutions that it's not in the land of Eretz Yisrael. It's either in a hothouse or a hydroponic. If you grow vegetables on water, you can do that during Shemitah.
Even outside?
Yes, there's a halachic disagreement, machloket, about does it have to be covered also, like what I said before about the houseplants, but that's, there are those who even say even if it's not covered, and if it's covered, it's certainly okay, even outside. Again, it's disconnected from the ground. You put it in a pool, it's not in a pool in the ground, it's in a pool disconnected from the ground, and then you can grow things in it.
So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is come December, January, February, and extending through the summer next year, the only vegetables that we should be eating are ones that are grown in a hothouse or hydroponically, or are coming in from other countries.
Or there may be heter mechira.
Mhm.
There won't be
Okay.
otzar beitin. Vegetables of otzar beitin will end at a certain point. I don't know, maybe in modern days you can freeze them or keep them for a longer period of time. That might also be true. I'm not sure about that.
Two questions. First, with fruit or vegetables that have Kedushas Shvius, do you have, sometimes you buy a little too much. Let's say like you bought 36 potatoes. I don't think even in your vegetarian house, you're eating 36 potatoes every day, but sometimes stuff goes bad. Do you have to make sure that if you buy fruits and vegetables that they don't go bad, that you eat them, or
No.
you're allowed to let it go bad?
You don't have to eat it so it doesn't go bad. But if it went bad, you should throw it in a put it in a Shmitah garbage bag separately and not with all the regular garbage.
Okay, the second thing is not for me to understand, but for my friend. He wants to know marijuana that's grown in Israel. What's the deal?
He has the medical need.
Well,
Cannabis refui.
yes.
Okay. Oh, I didn't discuss buying flowers, so that has to do with it also. Something which is not for consummation does not have kedushat shvi'it. In other words, flowers, you're not allowed to plant on Shmitah, even if it's not a fruit tree, just a regular tree or a bush or things like that, like a garden, just a garden for aesthetic purposes. You're not allowed to plant on Shmitah, whether it's flowers, trees, marijuana, whatever. You're not allowed to plant them on Shmitah. But once they've grown, they do not have Kedushat Shvit. So you can, if someone, that's why, even if the guy in the nursery didn't keep Shmitah, that's not good. But it doesn't have Kedushat Shvit, it's not forbidden for me to consume. So I can buy it from him. Halachically, I'd rather buy from someone who kept Shmitah, but halachically I can buy it from him. And therefore, I'm not really, not me, but the other guy, he never tried marijuana in his life, okay? So he doesn't know what it's about. As far as he understands, you don't eat it. You don't consume it. So, what do you do with it? You sniff it. So it doesn't have Kedushat Shvit. So I would say you can buy it. The same is true with flowers. Flowers on Shemitah, first of all, generally, if they don't have a special smell, is there a better word for that in English? Flowers with a special fragrance, scent, fragrance. Some flowers, most flowers are grown for their beauty, the aesthetic, the looks. Some flowers are grown for the scent, for the fragrance. Those that don't have a special scent or fragrance or whatever we're going to call it, don't have Kedushat Shvit, and therefore, again, you can buy them during Shemitah. And once again, I would rather buy them from someone who keeps Shemitah, because at the beginning of the year, for the first half of the year, they've already been planted, and they grow later on in the year. When we buy them, and on Erev Shabbat or during the week or Erev Chag, whatever it is, they've finally been harvested and brought out to the market after they were planted long ago. So that's okay. But during the year, later in the year, the flowers are flowers that have to be planted during the year. So just like everything else, it can be done in a halachic way if you do it in a hothouse and so on. And so I will look on Shemitah for someone who has a halachic hechsher, that he is working according to Shemitah. I spoke with Harav Stein, who is in charge of Kashrut in Ra'anana. I spoke to him this last Friday because of issues that we're dealing with in our shiur before Mincha on Shabbat. But I also asked him about Shemitah. So first of all, I'll give you a scoop, some news, that about half a year ago, there was a shiur, and the Rabbanut made a Zoom shiur about the plans that they're working with the Iriyah, so that the gardening in Ra'anana during Shemitah will be according to Shemitah. It's not all working. It's not going to be 100%. He said to me, Rav Stein said to me, it looks like now it'll be 50, 60%. I said to him, that's amazing. That's a lot. It has been zero. To grow to 50, 60%, that is amazing. Bezrat Hashem, he said, yeah, we still strive for better. I said, okay, next Shemitah will grow, will continue to grow, but it's great. But I also asked him about flower shops. He said they go around to flower shops and the owners look at them like zombies. They don't understand what they want. You know, what does this have to do with Shemitah? So usually they're not interested. But there was, I remember, at least one store 7 years ago.
Yeah, I patronized one in the past. And there was, I think, one I usually go to. I try to go to it.
The Passage near Banka Poalim. If you go to David's, what's his shop called?
Big deal.
The Big Deal. We'll do some advertisement for David. The passage there that you go into, Big Deal, there was, at least I think there still is, a flower shop there. And last Shemitah 7 years ago, they worked with a special hechsher for Shemitah. So I said to Rav Steiner, maybe I'll remind him closer to Rosh Hashanah, get the kilo together to tell the flower stores, you know, we will come by from your stores. Maybe there will be 2 or 3 or 4 flower shops in Ra'anana that will work according to, will buy from farmers or flower people who grow flowers according to the halachot of Shemitah. Maybe we'll be able to strengthen that and support it. But halakha, this is an idea to encourage, to help out, to help things grow in a certain direction. But halakha, lemaaseh, flowers, regular flowers, you can buy on Shemitah. It's not forbidden to buy them. If they have a special fragrance, it's halachic machloket, whether or not they have Kedushat Shvit. If they have Kedushat Shvit, you shouldn't buy them unless they're, you know, the guy has a hechsher, he did it according to heter mechira or in a hothouse or something else, and then it won't have Kedushat Shvit. Even that is controversial because it's very rare that the flower, that the fragrance is the main issue of these flowers. Usually it's, you know, it's a flower that also has a nice smell. But so it's controversial, it's questionable. But to have it in mind when the time comes.
Why is it okay to buy flowers? Is the assumption that they weren't grown, they weren't planted during this year, or it's okay because we're not eating them?
The beginning of the year, they were planted and before Rosh Hashanah, which is fine, and they're grown, and that's not an issue. Later in the year, as you said, because we don't eat them, the Kedushat Shvi'it is in the things that we eat. Things that we don't eat. If you want to buy a house plant, you want to buy a plant for your house, as I said before, in a pot from a nursery, I would support looking into the question, does he keep Hilchot Shmitah? Look for a place that does. But it's not halachic demand, because b'diavad, once it's been grown, it's not an isur. It's not forbidden to use it once it's been grown. In halakha, there are all kinds of situations, like we've discussed just recently, kil'ayim. You know, if you mix different vegetables, different seeds together, or different trees together, and something grows from it, if it's not involved in a vineyard, in grapes, then it's not forbidden once it grows. You're not allowed to do it. But once it bears fruit, once the fruit or the vegetable grows, it's not forbidden to be eaten. So there are things in halakha where if someone does something that's forbidden, it becomes forbidden. And there are instances when someone did something wrong, but once it's there, it's not forbidden to us to use it. So regarding Shemitah, if it's something that we eat, it's considered to be something that we have to know how it's done. If it's not something that we eat, then halachically it's not forbidden to us for us to enjoy it, to use it in a way that's not eating it. So once again, going back to the flowers with the fragrance, that's questionable. Is it the same as eating, or is it only smelling and we don't swallow them? So that, all that is questionable. But there are opinions that it would have Kedushat Shvi.
Okay, so back to the food. Are we supposed to be looking at our bags of frozen vegetables throughout the year for something special printed on that?
Yes, you will. Frozen vegetables, yes. You will find on the hechsher something that will say what it is, absolutely. But usually when you go to the supermarket, you'll know which supermarket you're going to. The regular supermarkets will probably be heter mechira, but I would like to know if they have Shmitah lechumra, what some people call lechumra will be things that I don't want to buy. I would prefer to buy heter mechira. Or where is it coming from? Look, at the end of the day, there isn't going to be enough Israeli produce from heter mechira, and they're going to have to import things from Europe. So I'm going to buy them and eat them. I'm not going to, but as much knowledge as I can accumulate and be aware of, I would like to. So a certain supermarket will be based like hotels. You're going to go away on a vacation to a hotel. My sister had a bar mitzvah 14 years ago, or 21 years ago. I had a bar mitzvah of one of her sons 21 years ago. And they were planning on doing it somewhere. It ended up being during Shemitah. And they found out that this hotel is Shemitah lechumra, and they didn't do their bar mitzvah there because they didn't want to support that. So in supermarkets also, you'll go to your fruit and vegetable store. You'll ask, what are you doing? Look at the hechsher from the Rabbanut. Ask Rav Stein. Where do you find this in Ra'anana? Where do you find that in Ra'anana? We're all going to try and put the knowledge together and market it to the congregations, to the shuls in Ra'anana in an orderly fashion, so you'll know where to go to look for what.
Do you know what
So-
Dub Devon is doing, like some of the organic produce? What will that be from, or it just depends?
Did you ask about a specific place?
Well, Dub Devon is like the health food store. I mean,
Nitzat.
yeah.
Does Azriel still work there?
He went back there, yeah, several months ago.
Okay.
yes.
Good. Okay, good for him. So Nitzat Devan, yeah, I don't know, but I can tell you that generally the fruits and vegetables in Nitzat Devan are not under the supervision of the Rabbanut, the Ra'anana Rabbanut. They chose not to be. I found that out some years ago. I actually mentioned that, I announced it in the community. They say they have a hashgacha of Nitzat Devan from somewhere or other. But it's not, I called Rav Stein about that a few years ago when I found out about this. It is not under the supervision of Rabbanut Ra'anana. Come Shemitah, you're going to have to ask them some questions. Ask them, where does it come from? Who's giving the hashgacha? Talk to him, call him, ask him what's going on. Is it under your supervision? What does it mean? It's a good question.
The business about not making strange recipes, I mean, that's a very vague thing. And also, if I come from some country where they made this kind of food, but very few people in Israel make this food, does that matter? Do we have
to? Yes, you have to start a campaign so that you now have 6 years after Shemitah to make a campaign and make it popular by the next Shemitah.
Is it really based on local customs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, if it's not popular here, but most of the world does it, maybe it's okay. If it's something that in one place is popular and the rest of the world isn't, so I would say in that place it's okay, but otherwise it wouldn't be okay.
This country is mizu galuyot from all over the place. The other thing Gabby asked was about simchei marpeh. If you use it for using things for healing, not for eating. Is that...
If it's fruits, depends. It would depend, I would think, on what it was grown for. If it was grown for fruits and vegetables and then let's take a certain percentage to make something which is for medical purposes, then it would have Kedushat Shvit. You would have to know what's going on. If
Herbal
it
medicine. It's
grown
herbal.
from the beginning, not people don't swallow it, but make something medical from it, that's probably not with Kedushat Shvit.
But can you consume it?
Again, depending on, I would have to know what, what's the story? What was done with it? Was it grown milichatchila for medical purposes or other purposes, or was it, did they go and buy a certain amount from the farmer and use it for some other purpose? That would make a difference.
Interesting.
Okay, I hope we touched most of the practical issues, and I'm sure there will be more things that will come up. And I do have 2 or 3 issues for homework.
יישר כוח, תודה.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yishal koach.
Thank you. Thank you.
The